Black perspectives haven't always been centered in the telling of America's story. Now, we're taking center stage. Introducing NPR's Black Stories, Black Truths, a collection of Black-led stories from NPR's podcasts. Search NPR Black Stories, Black Truths wherever you get your podcasts.
Support comes from Mercedes-Benz of Buckhead, where the power of electric meets the power of Mercedes. Introducing a lineup of electric vehicles, the EQB, the EQS sedan and SUV, the EQE sedan and SUV. The vehicles are all electric. The feeling is all Mercedes. Mercedesofbuckhead.com.
Hey, want to welcome you to Political Breakfast on WABE. I'm Lisa Ram, your host. Brian Robinson, our strategist, our Republican strategist, is here. Our producer, Lily Oppenheimer, is here. And we have a guest sitting in today, Saba Long. Saba is sitting in for Theron Johnson, who is taking a little time off, but will be back next week. So, Saba, welcome. Always great to see you and always great to have you.
It's great to be on the show, and a happy birthday to Theron.
Yeah.
Yes, happy birthday to Theron. I know he listens.
He didn't want us to give it away. He didn't want us to give it away. He didn't want us to tell folks that he takes his birthday off. But hey, there you have it.
I think he just turned maybe 39 or 40, something like that.
29.
We're gonna tell all your business while you're gone, Theron. So there you have it. But yeah, we wish him a happy birthday. And again, he'll be back next week. Saba is the executive director of the Atlanta Civic Circle. And every time she comes on, always interested in hearing what you all are keeping an eye on these days, especially as this political year 2024 begins to ramp up. Saba, what's piquing your interest? I know you guys are watching the legislature really closely, aren't you?
We're watching the legislature. We're watching anything related to participatory democracy legislation, thinking of ramifications of a referenda on projects like Cop City. We're also watching housing legislation. There's some conversation about what does habitability mean, to have a home that is habitable. And there's some bipartisan support around that. And then the next big thing that I am working on, our team is working on, is how we cover the 2024 election. With a real emphasis on the local races. There's enough people talking about what's happening nationally. We want to make sure that folks understand what is it that happens at the local level and how do you engage in local politics. Who's running for state rep and state senate? What does it mean to be a district attorney or a solicitor? Like, what powers do those folks have? So those types of things we're going to be focusing on.
Yeah, we've kind of forgotten about our local politicians, haven't we, in wake of all of this Donald Trump news?
Yep, that's right. And all politics is local. And so if you can understand what's happening at the local level, that's really where you as an individual, as a resident, and as a citizen can make the most impact. Those are the folks who are in your community and are connected to your issues in a real way that national politicians, unfortunately, just aren't.
Yeah, you talked about how, locals need to know who their district attorney is. And one in particular is making the news, as we all know. And I wanted to talk about Fani Willis's testimony with both of you today. And just get your initial reaction of her walking into the courtroom saying, okay, I'm ready to take the stand. I'm going to testify here, when there was all this discussion on whether she was going to testify or not. And I guess she heard enough and she marched in there and said, look, enough is enough. And here I am.
You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
What was your initial reaction to all of that?
So I intentionally did not watch the testimony. I felt like it was a bit of a TMZ type of trial, just the reaction, the media reaction, the punditry reaction, social media, etc. And I think folks are forgetting about what's really at stake here. Fani Willis is not on trial. Nathan Wade is not on trial. This is a trial related to the Donald Trump and what, the quote unquote perfect phone call and what happened in Georgia. And so I intentionally did not give that a lot of my time and energy. But what I think what's most important to think about is who are the stakeholders? What was Fani trying to accomplish? Who was she reaching to when she was, speaking in front of the judge? And then at the end of the day, This is an election year, as we've talked about. Fani Willis is up for re-election. And I think Democrats have shown in response to her conversation that they are going to be all in, that they're going to back her. I think that is really what, for her, I imagine was most important, to have that solidarity and support amongst Democrats and amongst Black folks, and particularly Black women.
Yeah, and she even said that. She said, "I'm not the one on trial here. Let's not get it twisted, so to speak." What was your reaction, Brian, to all of that? Some people thought it was just over the top and just a little too dramatic.
It was certainly very combative, for sure. And the way she popped into the courtroom really made for some high drama. And I don't think that she was even supposed to be watching the testimony that was going on. So the fact that she came in when she did suggested that she was watching and saw an opportunity for a dramatic entrance. But I don't think she was trying to be dramatic. I think she was obviously emotional. I think there was just a lot bubbling inside of her that she had to get out. She was ready to go fight. She was in gladiator mode. And that was what we saw throughout the day. I am not like Saba. I wish I could have seen more of it than I did. I had meetings all day that day, and so I couldn't tune in to what was the best TV of the week. And when I go back to Lisa, and Saba mentioned one of the layers of this, and that is the political layer. What does this mean for Fani Willis, the Democratic politician who's going to be on the ballot in May in the primary and then in November in the general? And if she says that Democrats are rallying behind her, I tend to believe that. I'm sure Theron would say the same. Because I do think that was somewhat up in the air. Democrats were being really quiet about Fani Willis. A lot of them were like, whoa. Why is she not answering the question? This is an optics issue. And it does seem like she put some of those partisan fears to rest. I say partisan as in feelings of partisans, the people, the Democratic leadership in the county. So the second layer is the legal layer. Did she make the case that she should be able to stay on as the lead prosecutor here? I don't think that the judge is going to take her and the office off of the case. I do think there's a chance they take Nathan Wade off of the case and they try to split the baby a little bit there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
It kind of just does away with this issue. At the end of the day, the third layer is the one that I'm interested in, and it is the public relations layer. And I do think she's hurt the credibility of the case amongst some people in the viewership and some people in the electorate. She's given an opening to her critics about her credibility. As I've always said here, for 3 years, it's hard to believe this has been going on for 3 years, guys, but 3 years, this is a gray area case about whether or not Donald Trump was explicitly calling for fraudulent action on that phone call with Brad Raffensperger. And a gray area case depends on the credibility and the believability of the prosecutor. And I do think she's undermined herself in that way, and she has strengthened, if not the legal position of Donald Trump and his co-defendants, she has strengthened the public standing of Donald Trump and his co-defendants.
Saba, expound on that. What does public perception play in all of this right now after the testimony, after hearing from Wade, after hearing from her father?
It plays a tremendous part, and it's why the Trump attorneys have done what they've done, right? The only reason why we know about this is because this is a truly political case. Yes, it is a legal case, but it is a political case, and politics is all about the court of public opinion. And so I think at the end of the day, again, Democrats were generally going to be all in on what the DA was planning to do, and Republicans generally were going to be against this case. And so the question is, where do folks in the middle lie? Where does the independent voter lie? And, you know, I had a conversation about this with the National Reporter early on when when it was news was breaking that there was an alleged relationship. And I asked them two questions. One was, did Nathan Wade do the job that he was hired to do? Right? Was he grifting, or was he actually doing the work? And then the second question was, did he do the work well? Did he set out to accomplish what he had been hired to do? And the answer to both of those is yes, he did his job, and he did his job well. And so at the end of the day, I think that is what's most important. Now, I would venture, and the other thing I said to him is I would venture that if you look across the street at any other government agency, if you look at any corporation in America, you will find similar behavior where someone may have been in a relationship perhaps with someone else, but at the end of the day, is the work getting done? And the question is, are you making the main thing in this case? And this is not about who allegedly was with who. The question is about, to Brian's point, was this phone call within the legal bounds, or was there something going on that needs to be looked at and justice served?
Let me follow up here saying that what gets at me, what hurts her credibility with me, and y'all know, I have not been a Fani basher. I was very much in favor of her winning back when she ran against Paul Howard in 2020. I was utterly incensed with how he handled the Rayshard Brooks case. Wildly inappropriate. And she gave me hope of a more serious approach to the crime that was affecting Atlanta. But what gets my goat is her getting up at that church when these charges first came out and saying that this is racist. And the fact is, we all know now the underlying accusations are accurate. The question now is, when did the relationship start? Did she perjure herself, and did Nathan Wade perjure himself by lying about when the relationship started in their communications with the court? So we've gotten down to that. Not did this happen, were they in a relationship when she was a government official giving a contract, a no-bid contract, I will add, to a paramour, right? And
I would push back on that, Brian, because she said repeatedly that Nathan Wade was not her first choice, and there were other lawyers that she was trying to bring onto the case. So it wasn't like he was her top pick and, oh, this guy is hot and I want him to have the job. That was not the case here.
No, well, I understand, but like the fact that she also offered the job to Roy Barnes doesn't therefore make Nathan Wade the right pick for the job. There were some legitimate, you can disagree with them or not, you can say he's done a great job. I don't know, maybe he has done a great job. But there's a legitimate charge to make that this is not someone who has a background in RICO prosecutions. Like the first guy that they hired, who strangely enough has the same name as Fani Willis's dad, John Floyd, is somebody who does have an expertise in RICO. So to point out that Nathan Wade doesn't, that's not racist. And that's my thing. I just don't like going straight to, oh, this is racist. But I think it's particularly pernicious when the charges being made are true.
The world has changed, from shifts in power to a mental health crisis. So with all this social change, how do we balance the human desire for empathy, the business need for productivity, and the hope to make an impact in our community? This is a new podcast, The Social Impact Leader. I'm Jeff Schinnebarker. Join me as we explore people doing work a little different. Available every Wednesday at wabe.org/podcast or wherever you get your podcasts.
WABE.
From WABE Studios, the podcast where they read stories is a new children's storytelling podcast featuring notable Atlantans and performers reading classic and contemporary children's books. Each episode contains a story meant to entertain, inspire, and inform young listeners. No screens required. The podcast where they read stories features adaptations from both chapter books and picture books. Join us at wabe.org/stories podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts.
WABE.
My guess is that there are things that have been said to Fani, to Nathan, that we are not privy to, and that might be why she has said what she has said about feeling that there was some racism there.
Yeah, something fueled
I don't think
that,
she just
her
said
standing
that.
up in church, right, and saying that and defending his resume the way that she did, and saying we have this qualified prosecutor who's being attacked when you have these others who are not. Early on, though, some critics said that both of them should have recused themselves because this stands to get murkier. Even though they've testified, it could still get murkier. I don't know. What do you think about that, Saba? Would it have been a service or a disservice for Wade and Willis to recuse themselves?
There's a conversation happening about the Supreme Court and if Justice Thomas should recuse himself from anything Trump related, given that his wife is a big Trump supporter. All indications show that Justice Thomas is not planning to do that. I think that is an opportunity where there's some real debate about when is it appropriate to recuse yourself or not. A personal relationship where people are working together, that seems as something completely different. I don't see where it would have made sense for them to recuse themselves. We're not talking about a relationship between a prosecutor and a judge, or a prosecutor and someone who working on the opposite side. We're talking about two people working together on the same case.
Let's be honest. If there's any recusal by Fani Willis, that is the end of the case, right? No one else wants it. No one wants that grenade rolled in front of them. Let's recall what Roy Barnes said when Fani Willis went to him and asked him to be part of this case. And this is in the book, Find Me the Votes. We had the author zone a couple of weeks ago. I found this really interesting. Roy Barnes didn't want to talk too much with the authors about that conversation, but he said, who wants to be followed around by a bodyguard for the rest of your life? And I think that probably tells a wider story. No one wants to be involved in this, not only because maybe it's bad politics, maybe you feel like it's a personal safety issue. Now, that's a sad day in America that's where we are. I'm not condoning that. I am outraged by the fact that people feel that way on either side of the political divide. But for most jurisdictions in Georgia, it would have to be farmed out to somebody else, they don't have the resources or the local wealth, the tax base to support such a wide-ranging, gargantuan case against a former president of the United States. You got to think that the attorney general can't take the case because he's been a witness in the case. Like, he had to testify in front of the grand jury, so he is probably conflicted out. It would then go to the prosecuting attorney's council, which had the Burt Jones case referred to it. That was a year ago, and they have the same issue. Nobody wants to take the case. So this is Fani or it's nobody. This is Fani or it is none.
Lisa, the last thing I would say on this is to quote Steve Bannon, who is a Republican operative and strategist at the highest levels. And one of the things he says when he's talking about the case for Trump is flood the zone with an expletive. It starts with an S. I won't say any more. But
Got it.
his PR approach is to muddy the waters, to make it difficult for you to discern what should I really be paying attention to, what's really at stake here, what's really happening. And that is exactly what is happening right now with this conversation about when and where and how and why was the relationship between Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, rather than the facts of the case and what it means for Georgians, what it means for democracy. And the Trump lawyers and Republicans broadly have done a great job of capitalizing on this moment as a way to flood the zone.
Saba, in your opinion, did the defense present enough to have Willis and her team disqualified at this point?
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't, to Brian's point, I don't think the defense will be disqualified. Perhaps they'll split the baby down the middle. But even splitting the baby down the middle tremendously hurts the case, and it is a big win for Trump's lawyers.
I do want to say, though, Lisa, on this, one thing that I think bears looking at that doesn't sit well with a lot of folks is this idea that she's paying thousands of dollars in cash for trips. I don't know people who do that. I mean, who don't have a Venmo receipt, a bank transfer, an ATM receipt. To have 6 months of expenses and cash in your house is virtually unheard of. And plus, I mean, a really bad idea for anybody. And now
Well,
people
now
know
it is. Now it is
Yeah.
that you've told everybody. Yeah, now it is.
Yeah, Brian, I did not watch any of the testimony, and I heard about her father talking about this. But in Black and brown and immigrant communities, it is not uncommon.
Yeah. Don't trust
have
banks.
Cash.
Yeah, years and years of not trusting banks.
Yeah, I think it's
typical.
a combination
Yeah.
of not trusting banks and if something happens, being able to be nimble and quickly move to the next thing, whatever that might be. So that did not raise alarm bells for me. I have also been the person that I took. I made the reservations and someone paid me back in cash. Like that has happened to me on more than one occasion. So that, again, that did not ring any alarm bells for me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I carry about $40 on me. So criminals out there, I am not worth your time.
You go to Shake Shack with that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Just barely. Barely.
Yeah. You can get 2 burgers at Shake Shack.
Well, I mean, and moving forward, if we ever get past all of that, what is it going to do for other district attorneys? I mean, they're going to be watched pretty closely moving forward, do you think, in wake of all of this?
Yes, I think that the political focus on district attorneys has changed, at least in the short term and maybe for the long term, by what we saw coming out of COVID, where you did have, and this is the Republican point of view, this kind of stuff can get there and worked up sometimes, but there was this movement across the country, and yes, it was funded by George Soros. We know for a fact that he had a campaign to get these soft on crime DAs put into office. People like Deborah Gonzalez in Athens, who, laid out a blueprint of crimes that she wasn't going to prosecute when she got into office. And the gangs were listening. They heard her. And she had a mass exodus of prosecutors who were worried about public safety leave the office. We've seen California voters do recalls against these DAs because the repercussions of sending a signal that you're not going to prosecute crime are obvious and they are immediate. Like you have CVS's and Walgreens that won't open up in San Francisco and other California jurisdictions because they quit prosecuting shoplifting under $1,000. So you go in and you take $900 worth of stuff and walk out, right? The stores aren't going to stop you. And it's causing a quality of life issue for law-abiding citizens. And so we're seeing this focus, and in Georgia, it's manifested not just in the putting Fani Willis under the microscope, it's manifested in legislation that is going to be updated this year and sent to the governor to provide citizens with a review process if DAs in their jurisdiction aren't prosecuting crime as they were sworn to do. It is the prosecuting attorney oversight panel, and I think it's a politically popular move for Republicans because the Democrats who live in these jurisdictions are the ones who are at the tip of the spear. They're the ones suffering from the rise in crime that we've seen since COVID.
I would add to that, certainly there are aspects of that I disagree with Brian, but one thing I think broadly, looking at through the public lens, the public, I don't think broadly has a good understanding of what is the role of a district attorney, what is the role of their local and county judicial system, or their state judicial system. And so I think the onus is on us as political consultants, as media folks and reporters to think through, how do we inform the public? How do we help them understand what are those levers of power? And you can have a debate about what crimes are worth prosecuting and what aren't. There's a question about, does it make sense? And this has been a big conversation amongst DAs. To what extent are you prosecuting folks who seek an abortion after the 6-week period, right? What is appropriate on that regard? You can have a conversation about shoplifting, and I think most people would say, yes, if you've shoplifted, you should be prosecuted, right? But we also know that a lot of times there's discretion at play in these things. And so what is that line of who has discretion to make one decision or another that impacts your life and your quality of life? I mean, that's really the conversation that we're having.
I think discretion played a role in the Trump case, too.
Yeah, I was going to say the Civic Circle kind of launched a campaign at one point, right, to educate people about the roles of the different offices in their communities, right?
Yeah, so in the 2022 election, we did a lot of work around helping people understand what does it mean to be, some of those state positions that you don't know. You know what the governor's doing. You know what the lieutenant governor is doing. But what is the labor commissioner? Like, what role and responsibilities do they have? The insurance commissioner. There's a lot of conversation right now about how high insurance rates are. So helping people understand these positions that have a direct impact on their lives. Again, around the judicial system, I think there's a tremendous amount of education that needs to happen that helps people understand who are these judges, how do they generally, what informs their opinions, how do they rule, so that you can understand what they're doing, and because it impacts your life, whether you realize it or not, it does impact your life.
Saba Long is the executive director, Atlanta Civic Circle. Its mission is to inform the public on the most critical issues facing Metro Atlanta. Brian Robinson is a Republican strategist, communications consultant, former deputy chief of staff for Governor Nathan Deal. Thanks for the conversation, both of you, and I'm sure we'll probably be having more again soon as this story with Fani Willis continues to develop in the coming days. So thank you so much for checking in.
Thank you. There are more chapters to be written on this Fani Willis conversation.
A lot more, yes. I presume, right?
Yes. Well, I hope we get some more good TV drama out of all of it. That's after 3 years, we need to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, they told her not to come back Friday. So what did that mean? Did it help her or hurt her, do you think?
I think she had said what she was going to say. There was no more blood to be squeezed out of this turnip.
Yeah, she got it all in. Okay, y'all, have a great week.
Y'all take care.